Right out. I'll go with you since you're back there. You be the furthest away to hear something. If you hear me rustling around with it, getting tangled up in the wires, tell me too. That way I won't. I'll try not to overly rustle.
The little one's already on, right?
Yeah, I got both of them. Oh, I think.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Before we start, I'm just remind you that I am a farmer, not a professor, not a preacher, not a whatever. I'm just telling you what I'm read, the way I understand it, which could be perfectly wrong. All I'm telling you, the whole purpose of this thing is for us to expand our idea of God and who God is and what God is and what we think about God, and it will help us. I left my phone back there. I was going to read a verse. No. Let's turn to 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 11. Because I want us to know where we are and the reason that we have difficulty going where we're not. Starting in verse 11, therefore, knowing the fear of the Lord, we persuade men, but we are made manifest to God. And I hope that we are made manifest also in your consciences. We are not again commending ourselves to you, but are giving you an occasion to be proud of us, that you may have an answer for those who take pride in appearance and not in heart. For if we are beside ourselves, it is for God. If we are of sound mind, it is for you. For the love of Christ controls us, having concluded in this that one died for all, therefore all died. And he died for all, that they who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died and rose again on their behalf. Therefore from now on we recognize no man according to the flesh, even though we have known Christ according to the flesh, yet now we know him thus no longer. Therefore, if any man is in Christ, he is a new creature. The old things passed away. Behold, new things have come. Now all these things are from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ, and gave us the ministry of reconciliation, namely that God was in Christ, reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against them. And he has committed to us the word of reconciliation. The love of Christ controls us. See if that's better. The love of Christ controls us. Can you remember before you remember? And none of us can. I don't care how old you are, because Christ has been in the world for a long time. So we've been moved by the history before us, because we know, do not envy, do not lust, do not, different things. We know all of these things, and they are codified into our laws. We don't steal from you. We don't do this. Why? Because they're in our laws. We know this in our DNA and I say in our DNA from when we grew up, because we've heard all of this about these laws. And I want you to put yourself back here with Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve, back in the garden. The only thing you knew was what? Well, you don't eat of the tree. They ate of the tree. They gained the knowledge of good and evil. Now, who decides what is good and who decides what is evil? Who decided? I don't know if God did or not. He said, don't eat of the tree. They did it, and their eyes were open. They got the knowledge of good and evil. So who decides what is good and who decides what is evil? I do. You do. Adam did. Eve did. Cain did. Now, when Cain and Abel came and gave their sacrifice before God, Abel gives the firstlings. Cain brings his. He was the first one to give an offering. But God said, I'm not pleased with this. And he gets upset. Now, he had a choice there. What choice did he have? What choice did Cain have at the time?
Make it right with God, or
make it right with God, or don't make it right with God. Okay? God's the one that said it. I brought what I thought was going to be good enough. Evidently, God wasn't pleased with it. But God gave him a chance. But Cain didn't avail himself of the opportunity. We don't know what he said to Abel, but I can imagine in my mind going back, and I'll put myself there and say, what in the world could Cain have? I brought him that. I don't know why he didn't like it. Abel says, well, I brought the first. Do you know who God is? I mean, do you see all this stuff around you? Do you see this world? Do you see everything? The stars at night. He provides all of this stuff. And Mom and Dad got thrown out of the garden because they didn't do what he said. So it's simple. Well, what does that do? When somebody points out how wrong you are, what do you do? Generally. That's right. Okay. Cain is the first person born on earth and Abel's the second. Now, was there a law against killing your brother?
not that we know of.
What was he basing it on? He got mad, he killed him. What was Cain?
The lawmaker.
He was God. Cain was God, and he decided that he didn't like that. Now, you look at it, and God, what does God say? God didn't, by rights, by what we think, that's the reason I'm telling you got to go back. By what we think, what should God have done? Told him, we're going to kill you. But God doesn't. God doesn't kill him. Why? That would have been the perfect opportunity to give the first law. Don't kill your brother. You know better than that. Well, yeah, I know better than that. But he made me mad. The only problem is there's no remedy for it. But God gives him a different punishment. He sends him out, curses the ground. In which way does the ancestry of Cain go? They had the knowledge of good and evil. Now, can you imagine? Now, you can't. But I'm telling you to try. Because it's very, very hard. Because I've been doing it for a long time. If all I had was in myself the knowledge of what was good and what was evil, and I had to make the decision, what would I do? Yeah. Well, yes. But what would I do? That's what. Yeah, I would make myself right, but what am I really doing? I have destroyed myself because I don't know what is good and evil. I know, well, I say, well, that guy's got a pretty good looking sheep over there, and that'll really benefit my flock. I'm just going to go take it. Now, I sit here and think, okay, well, if it was my sheep and that guy came and got it, I don't think I'd like it too good. But we don't do that. People may have done it. And I know people had to do it because Noah was righteous, Enoch was righteous. And they're the only two righteous people. None of Cain's lineage, it goes off and that's the end of it. I mean, it just goes. They were still there in the world. But if you don't have like what we have the benefit, see, we have the benefit of the Bible and we don't understand how wonderful it is to have something to guide us, to tell us what happened in the past. What is the right thing to do? What is the Spirit move and prick us and we say, man, I shouldn't do that, I shouldn't do that. And we fight it or we don't fight it. We give in or we don't give in. Go ahead.
Give you an example of that in the Eastern culture. They thought they knew something about medicine. I think it was Mao Zedong. Go back in that lineage, way back. Anyway, they thought that mercury was a good cure for what the Oriental emperor had. Centuries later, they changed their mind, but that was too late.
Yeah, that's right.
Try taking mercury.
But they didn't have, they had this much knowledge and they made their decision. Can you imagine if your life was just entirely based on the knowledge of good and evil? You didn't have somebody say, you really shouldn't be. I mean, was it wrong to be envious? Was it wrong to be jealous? What was it? Was it wrong to steal?
None of it was based on that before. Not at that time.
You know what that was based on? I have the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
But the problem is once you warp your sense of knowledge of good and evil, you don't remember these rulers and authorities are watching this. They watch how the world has warped itself because it's gotten the knowledge of good and evil. That's the reason you wind up with nothing but evil and violence. But was there a law against taking your wife if I wanted her? No. But what should occur in my mind? I don't want you taking mine. You know what I'm saying? We know all of this stuff, but the problem is they had to figure out every single thing for themselves. They're in a totally different world than we are. And of course, we kind of zip by all this stuff and we get to Noah. Noah was righteous. Enoch walked with God. So God was still around. I don't know if God was down here with Cain's bunch. I would assume that he would try. And I don't know what it means he walked with God. I don't know if God was still there because I know Cain saw God because he's worried about your face. I'll be hidden from your face. Was that the only thing they had? And the reason I bring all of this up is because of 1 Peter 3:17. So let's go there. As you read the Bible, you run into these things that just really you try to figure out what is he talking about? What does it mean? Because we've got a history of studying, and we know, well, God is just. God is, did not, in the. Let me read this first. We went over. Friday. We went to see the Van Gogh thing in Memphis. I highly recommend it if you like any of that kind of stuff. Anyway, Vincent Van Gogh, his dad was a preacher. And he tried to be a preacher, but he just couldn't because he was having problems. See, this is in the late 1800s, and the churches had really gone nuts in Europe. I mean, they were just, they really didn't believe in God. It's like a seminary today. The last poll taken for the seminaries in the United States was less than 5% even believe Jesus is the Son of God. Okay? And these are people that are teaching preachers. Okay? They're trying to teach you the people who are supposed to be teaching you and what they're teaching you, and they don't believe Jesus is the Son of God. So it's kind of, you know, they were having the similar problem. But Vincent he was really, he finally kills himself at 37. I mean, he has his brother Theo kind of tries to hold him together. I mean, his art, he just had a tragic life, but he had beautiful paintings, and he had trouble with God because he tried to be a preacher, but he just didn't see the love of God in the church. He didn't see the love of God, you know, to him. But anyway, he writes a letter. I think that everything that is really good and beautiful, the inner, moral, spiritual, and sublime beauty in men and their works comes from God. And everything that is bad and evil in the works of men and in men is not from God, and God does not approve of it. But I can't help thinking that the best way of knowing God is to love many things. Love this friend, this person, this thing, whatever you like, and you will be on the right road to understanding Him. Better, that is what I keep telling myself, but you must love with a sublime, genuine, profound sympathy, with devotion, with intelligence, and you must try all the time to understand Him more, better, and yet more. That will lead to God. That will lead to an unshakable faith. Anyway, he winds up killing himself at 37. He sees beauty and he understands beauty and love is from God, and everything bad is not. I mean, he got that much, and he knew if it was a beautiful thing. But the problem is, some people think things that are beautiful are not so beautiful. But anyway, I want to make this is going to. I'm going to read this, and I want you to explain it, since I don't know. In 1 Peter 3, starting in verse 17, well, let's go to 13. And who is there to harm you if you prove zealous for what is good? But even if you should suffer for the sake of righteousness, and you are blessed, and do not fear their intimidation, and do not be troubled. But sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts, always being ready to make a defense to everyone who asks you to give an account for the hope that is in you, yet with gentleness and reverence. And keep a good conscience, so that the thing in which you are slandered, those who revile your good behavior in Christ, may be put to shame. For it is better, if God should will it so, that you should suffer for doing what is right rather than for what is wrong. For Christ also died for sins once for all, the just for the unjust, in order that He might bring us to God, having been put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the Spirit, in which also He went and made proclamation to the spirits in prison, who once were disobedient, when the patience of God kept waiting for the day in the days of Noah, during the construction of the ark, in which a few, that is 8 persons, were brought safely through the water. Now, we usually do 3:21 about baptism. It says, Christ died. What did He do? In verse 18. Well, wait a minute. No, verse 18. We're okay. In verse 18, He died for sins once for all, the just for the unjust. Why? To bring us to God. Okay. Having been put to death in the flesh, what was He done? What was done to Him? Okay. He was dead in the flesh. but alive in the Spirit. What did he do while he was in the Spirit? When he was in the Spirit, what's the next verse say? Okay. Which, what? He also went. Now, when it says went, what is that? If somebody said he went somewhere, what did he do? He went somewhere. He's gone. And made proclamation. Proclamation. What is proclamation? What does yours say? Preached. Preached.
Mine says proclamation, proclaim.
Proclaim. To who? To the spirits. And where are the spirits? In prison. What spirits are in prison?
The disobedient of Noah's day.
The disobedient of Noah's day. So Christ dies on the cross. How long was he in the earth? I mean, in the grave. 3 days. Was he alive those 3 days in the flesh? No, he was alive in the spirit. And he went and preached. What is the purpose of preaching? To teach what? I mean, I can. Truth. And what are you trying to do when you do the truth? Why do you see somebody that is in trouble? They don't understand they're dead. And you preach to them. What is the purpose of preaching to them? To open their eyes to see you're dead. What do you need? You need saving. You don't even understand where you are. Christ in the Spirit went and preached to the spirits in prison. Now, tell me what a prison is. Yeah, but who goes to prison? Guilty people. But when you think of a prison, what do you think of? It doesn't say hell. It doesn't say these people were in hell. It says they were in prison. Confined. Okay? When you think of hell, does anybody ever get out of hell? Does anybody ever get out of prison? Yeah, they do. If they do what? Well, change, or you have served. Yeah, you have your sentence commuted. You've served your time. You've done whatever. There is a chance to get out of prison. There is no chance to get out of hell. Christ went and preached to the spirits who were in prison. So this is a special place, you understand. Christ goes to the prison where these people were. And who were these people?
By saying spirits, does that mean they're not alive in the flesh? What does that mean, spirit? As opposed to people?
Yeah. It's spirits in prison. It don't say spirits in hell. I want you to, there's a big difference. Spirits in prison who what? Who, you said it a while ago. Okay, disobedient when? No, it says, read it. I read it exactly. You read it exactly. Read it word for word. I'm only smart enough to read one word at a time. That's one. No, close. The days of Noah. So who were these people that lived during this time that are in prison? Why would God put them in prison?
They were disobedient.
They were disobedient. But he didn't destroy them. Why would Christ go to preach to them? That's what I want to know. What I'm telling you, if you can back your mind up to know all I got, if all I knew was the knowledge of good and evil, kill me now, God, because I don't have enough sense to make the right decision. And these people were not in this. Even under the law of Moses would have been much better. Even we'll see when we get into Job and Abraham, even what they were privy to was some kind of teaching. You know, Job said, if I've lusted after a woman, if I haven't, God strike me down. If I've kept the needy, break my arm. If I haven't, taken care of the orphan. So he knew there was something. He was offering sacrifices. Every time it's one of his kids.
To me, the reason was that, like we have the situation, they had been in bondage to the devil, to sin. In other words, they were hopelessly locked in a place of condemnation, not a literal place, but their condition was hopeless. Unless they were.
Okay, we say, is there going to be any second chances? Does God, once you die, do you think you're going to get a second chance? No. Why did these people? I don't know. I'm saying that they didn't get a second chance. I'm saying this was their chance, because what God is showing to the rulers and authorities, if you think you can be me, let me show you what kind of mess the world will get into. Can you imagine now? You think it's 1,650 years. There's been 1 billion people on the earth, and you can't get but 2 righteous people? Now, what would you call that?
A bad situation.
You're not good enough to have the knowledge that makes you God.
Are you refusing it? They had the knowledge.
They had the knowledge of good and evil. They had it, but they didn't know it. They didn't know. You can't make the proper judgment. Why? Why is it that people get in arguments? Why are people in wars all the time? Why are people killing each other? Well, this guy thinks it's good. The example of the guy I gave last week, he kills somebody, he's in prison, and he's in there with a child molester, and that child molester keeps going. I'll tell you, you better be quiet, you better be quiet. Well, he's got a sense of right and wrong. He kills him. But he didn't have it before when he killed the other guy. So at what point do you have enough knowledge that you can be God to know good and evil? Go ahead.
That's what's confusing me about the knowledge of good and evil, because so they have the knowledge of both. They have the knowledge of good and they have the knowledge
Exactly.
of evil. They just don't know how to discern between them, or what?
Yeah, that's the problem with man, because you get in arguments with people. You think you're right, they think they're right. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, people do it all the time. And you think, well, am I really right? And you think back, well, yeah, I think I'm right. And the other guy's thinking, well, no, I think I'm right. I got the knowledge of good and evil. Why is there rape, murder, incest? Why is there adultery? Why is there fornication? Why is there envy, jealousy? Why is that? We know good and evil. Why did God? Okay, we had the knowledge of good and evil when we were about this big, and all of a sudden, what happens? We either feel guilty about it, and our conscience is still tender, and boom. Once you understand, if that's all you had, and you didn't have Christ, we would be just as messed up as them, because we do the same thing. But problem is we get old and we can't remember before we could remember. When we first got the first chance to make the choice between good and evil, and we chose to do evil, there's no hope. Go ahead.
Well, I would just like to mention that there is another scenario that is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that this is speaking metaphorically. That Noah, who is termed in Hebrews a preacher of righteousness, Jesus was in the person of Noah, preaching to those people of that day, giving them the same opportunity that he had, whatever knowledge he had, I don't know. But he could have been giving them the opportunity in the person of Noah. And I think yours says in the Spirit. The New King James says by the Spirit. I don't know if there is, I don't know Greek, so I don't know what the difference would be there. But anyway, I just like to mention that there is another possibility there of a different scenario.
Yeah, I understand that. But my problem was Christ died the just for the unjust, and he died and was made alive in the Spirit, in which he went. It doesn't read that way to me. I've read the thing, but it's just like, it just doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right. And so I see all of this and I'm saying, okay, did these people really have a chance? Can you imagine us if that's the only chance we had to be saved? Is we had the knowledge of good and we had the knowledge of evil. The first time you do evil, that's it, you're lost. There is no hope. All of these people were destroyed. But I look at the love of God and I look at the justice of God and I look at Christ dying. I don't know. I'm just saying this is a better explanation to me of the verse, because I put myself in this period of time and know that these people just went straight to hell. But it says they were in prison.
Can you pull that explanation down in just a couple, 2 or 3 sentences about what yours?
What I'm saying is, we have always heard, or I have always heard, that we had from Adam, we had the patriarch, what I don't know what they call. I can't. Been drawing a blank. Anyway, you have up to Noah, and then you have the patriarchs, and then you have Moses, and then you have Christ. And I'm saying, since we know from Ephesians 3 that the church, which was God's plan to save everyone, was to show his wisdom to the rulers and authorities in the heavenlies. I'm telling you, this is a path. This is, first God says, you want the knowledge of good and evil, the thing that makes you God, this is it, and see what happens. And you see the absolute destruction. In 1650 years, the world is destroyed. The world's destroyed because there is nothing, not a single thing. When everything that God made was good, man gets to be God for a short period of time, and it's just utter destruction.
I don't get that he gets to be God. He got the knowledge of good and evil. He has God.
No, that's not. Man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Unless he eat.
It says that the Gentiles did by nature. The Jews failed to do the law, basically, because the Gentiles had a knowledge of good and evil, basically indwelled in them from Adam and Eve, I presume.
Well, that's why I'm saying there's a difference between here, because once you get to Noah, you start seeing a rule. Then you get to Job, and you know the nature of the rules. You read Job, and you see the battle that's going on. And that's what the first 2 chapters, if that doesn't tell you what you're up against, there's no way to know. I mean, we were Adam, however long he was here, before the serpent deceived Eve, he was walking around that tree. So I have to put all this stuff in my mind as to the place. Why? If all I had was a knowledge of good and evil, and I had to save myself, which that's basically what this is. I have to do good every single time. There was basically there's no hope. And what he's showing is, when you have the knowledge of good and evil, okay, I know I shouldn't do this, but I do it. Guess what? You have condemned yourself to hell. If there is no sacrifice for these people, they were all condemned. Now you're talking about some severe judgment. That's some severe judgment. Because I can't make a mistake. I can't ever sin one time. Go ahead.
In your scenario there, do you think those people back there, they have the knowledge of good and evil? Do they have any concept of reward and condemnation for their action?
The only thing I would know would be with Cain, because he didn't please God. God said, because of what you have done, which was evil, you're going to be separated. You're not going to see my face, whatever. So I don't know. What I'm saying is I'm trying to put myself back into, if that's all I knew, was I had to make every choice to be good. And I couldn't ever make a choice to be evil, because of course, when we see Noah's time, when Noah, the animals, let's switch over and see what God says to Noah. Trust me, I've thought about this for 50 years, trying to reconcile in my mind different verses, and okay, go to chapter 9 of Genesis. Let's go up to verse 20 of chapter 8. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal and every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled the soothing aroma, and the Lord said to himself, I will never again curse the ground on account of man, for the intent of man's heart is evil from his youth. And I will never again destroy every living thing as I have done. The intent of man's heart is evil from his youth. And he's got the knowledge of good and evil, but all he can do is evil. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said to them, Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. Now verse 2 is a change. And the fear of you and the terror of you shall be on every beast of the earth, and on every bird of the sky, and everything that creeps on the ground, and all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are given. Evidently the animals weren't scared before, but now they're going to run when they see you. Every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you. I give all to you as I have given the green plant. Only you shall not eat the flesh with its life, that is its blood. And surely I will require your lifeblood. From every beast I will require it, which is interesting. And from every man's brother, I will require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man, as John pointed out last week. And as for you, be fruitful, multiply, populate the earth abundantly, and multiply in it. So God gives really the first law. And what is that? Summarized, brother.
Don't kill people.
Don't kill people. Now, do you think in your mind somebody would have to tell you, don't kill people? Now, how warped was mankind? Because of the violence in the earth, God was sorry he made man. Now you tell me, you got the knowledge of good and evil, and God's got to tell you, if you kill somebody, I'm going to have to kill you. Your blood's going to be shed because you're not supposed to shed man's blood. Now, is there any crime in man's thought? Now, you can think, well, I can justify this and I can justify that. But going up and killing somebody? I think about every culture figured out that ain't right. It was given to Noah. Cain was punished, but it wasn't. It was a totally different thing. Do you see? All you've got is the knowledge. Why would God have to say that by Noah's time? When I'm going to tell you, the animals are going to be scared of you. I'm not going to curse the earth because the intent of man's heart is only evil from his youth. And don't eat blood, an animal with the blood in it, because life's in the blood. And whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood's going to be shed. You can't kill your brother. Now that's 1,650 years, and it took you, and he's got to give the rule because you ain't figured it out. Now you tell me you can have knowledge of good and evil.
You can have the knowledge, but ignore it.
That's it. That's what I'm saying. You can't handle it. You can't handle the knowledge of good and evil. Anyway, this is how this verse, these people really didn't have a choice. And that's the reason Christ, this is my opinion, okay? I know everybody got a different one. That's the reason Christ went and preached to these spirits during this time that were imprisoned, because all they had was the knowledge of good and evil. They were gods without the equipment to be God. You might have been made in God's image, but you're not God. And once you get the knowledge of good and evil, you're going to be an absolute disaster. What was the prison? All of these people that died. That's where I say God made a place for them, a prison, to put them. After they died, there was a prison where these people that only had the knowledge of good and evil, and Christ came and said, "No, this is it. Christ died the just for the unjust." I don't know what he preached. I don't know what he told them. But I'm saying they never had a chance. I could be absolutely wrong. But I tell you what, I would never have wanted to live there. Never have wanted to live in that time where I'd be my own God. People make their own gods today. But just think, we've got Moses. The Jews had Moses. They had Melchizedek. They had different people around. Balaam was a prophet of God. They had different people saying what was right, all the way up to Moses gives the law. And then we get to Christ and we see it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can go through all of this. I can give you all the hints in the world, and you still can't do it. That's the reason Christ had to die, to pay the price for everything. You don't understand the love of God, and you don't understand the love of Christ. I'm telling you. You just put your mind back in. If every decision, and the only way I could be saved was my knowledge of good, my knowledge of evil, and me never doing it wrong, you ain't going to do it. And that's what the church is for. That's the magnificence of God, showing these rulers and authorities, you're not having this up here. You can't have the knowledge of good and evil. And I'm going to show you why. Look at the disaster of man and how God goes through and weaves through history to try to bring man to God, to try to give him an idea of this is why this is good and this is why this is evil. And anyway, my time's up. I went way past, sorry. It'll give you something to ruminate on and investigate for yourself.